"How dare you!" The billionaire stormed into his ex-wife's house. But when he saw her feeding newborn twins, his heart shattered, and what he did next, no one could imagine. "Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's family. May the Almighty clothe every woman in divine strength that never bends, grace that never fades, and peace that guards her soul. May every hidden tear become a seed of miracles, every heartbreak turn into healing, and every silence rise as a song of power. You are the heartbeat of faith, the cradle of hope, and the keeper of tomorrow's light. May your days bloom with courage, your nights rest in calm, and your heart overflow with unshakable love. But my precious family, where are my warriors of faith tonight? A simple like is love, a comment is connection, and together they light up the world. This is Mission 1000 likes, for every woman who rose when life tried to break her. If you believe love never loses, like this video. If your spirit walks in strength, comment, "I stand with Mr. Peter." The door exploded inward with a violence that shook the walls, and Jack Michael stood in the threshold like vengeance itself, his chest heaving with 3 years of buried rage, until his eyes landed on the woman he'd sworn to destroy, cradling 2 tiny faces that mirrored his own soul back at him. The wood frame splintered where his shoulder had connected with it, fragments scattering across the threadbare carpet. Amelia Johnson didn't scream. She didn't even flinch. She simply looked up from where she sat in the ancient rocking chair, a baby at each breast, and met his eyes with the kind of emptiness that comes from having nothing left to lose. "You're going to wake them," she said, her voice flat as winter earth. "Close the door." Jack stood frozen, his prepared fury dissolving into something he had no name for. The envelope in his hand, the one containing hospital records, birth certificates, blood-type documentation, suddenly felt weightless and impossibly heavy simultaneously. His mouth opened, but no sound emerged. The twins. His twins. Their faces were impossible mirrors of his own infant photographs. The same grey-green eyes that ran through generations of Michael blood. The same distinctive birthmark below the left ear that marked every Michael child ever born. "How long were you planning to hide them from me?" The words came out strangled, nothing like the accusations he'd rehearsed. "How long, Amelia?" She shifted slightly, adjusting the baby on her right breast with practiced efficiency that spoke of countless nights alone. "Violet's hungry." Willow just started eating. "You want to have this conversation, you wait until they're finished. I asked you a question, and I told you to wait." Amelia's eyes never left his face, but there was no defiance in them, no fear, no anger. Just exhaustion so deep it seemed carved into her bones. "You came here to rage at me, fine, rage. But these babies haven't eaten since this morning, because I had to choose between formula and keeping the heat on, and I chose heat because it's November. So you're going to stand there and you're going to wait, and when they're fed you can say whatever you came to say." Jack's legs moved without permission, carrying him into the apartment. The door swung shut behind him, the broken lock clicking uselessly. His eyes swept the single room that served as bedroom, living room, and nursery. The kitchenette in the corner barely qualified as functional. A hot plate sat on a counter that had seen better decades. 2 cribs, made from mismatched donated furniture, stood against one wall. Covered in blankets, he recognized as the kind given away at shelters. "This is how you're living." The words tasted like ash. "I'm living. Which is more than you let me do when you listen to your mother instead of your wife." The mention of Eleanor sent ice through Jack's veins. The package had arrived at his hotel this morning. No return address, just copies of documents that made his world tilt. Hospital admission records for Amelia Johnson. Twin birth certificates. Father listed as unknown. Blood typing that matched his exactly. He'd paid for rushed DNA analysis of the hair samples included. The results came back within hours. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. "I have documentation," Jack said, his voice cracking. "Everything from your lawsuit against my family, medical records, the bills, I saw how you nearly died giving birth because no hospital would take you without payment. Congratulations. You can read. Why didn't you tell me? The question hung in the air like smoke. Amelia finally looked away from him, down at the baby nursing contentedly at her breast. Violet, he somehow knew which twin was which, could see their personalities already in the way they held themselves. I tried, Amelia said quietly. I showed up at your building until security threatened to arrest me. I sent letters. I called from every phone I could find. I stood in the rain outside your mother's charity gala, and I was escorted away by men who told me if I came back, they'd file stalking charges. Jack's knees buckled. He caught himself on the wall, his hand leaving a smudge on cracked paint. That's impossible. I never received anything. Of course you didn't. Your mother made sure of it. She told me to my face the last time I tried. She said you didn't want to hear from me, that you'd moved on, that I was nothing but a mistake you were grateful to escape from. She wouldn't. Jack stopped. Yes, she would. Eleanor Michael would burn down the world to maintain her vision of their family legacy. He thought of the documents he'd found in his mother's safe. Fabricated paternity tests, photographs staged with actors hired to look like Amelia with other men, witness statements from people on Eleanor's payroll, bank records showing payments to doctors, lawyers, an entire infrastructure built to destroy one woman's credibility. The paternity test, Jack said hoarsely. The one that proved the baby couldn't be mine. There was no test. I know, because I was never asked to provide DNA. Your mother showed you paperwork for a test that never happened. But the photographs, the witnesses, everyone said, everyone lied. Everyone your mother paid to lie. And you believed them. You believed all of them instead of me, your wife, the woman who stood at an altar and promised you everything. You believed I would betray you, and you didn't even ask me if it was true. You just left, the weight of it crushed down on Jack's chest. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, his expensive suit crumpling against the cheap carpet. Oh God, Amelia, don't. Her voice cracked for the first time. Don't you dare fall apart now. You don't get to be the victim here. I destroyed you. Yes, you did. Silence filled the apartment except for Willow's contented nursing sounds. Jack stared at his hands that had signed separation papers without reading them thoroughly, hands that had accepted his mother's comfort while his pregnant wife faced homelessness. When did you know, he asked, that you were pregnant? The day after you left. I took 3 tests, all positive. I was going to surprise you that night with dinner. I'd bought this little frame that said Daddy's first photo, and I'd already made an appointment to see our baby together on ultrasound. Amelia's laugh was bitter. But instead, I came home to an empty house and your wedding ring on the kitchen counter. No note, no explanation. Just the ring and silence. Jack made a sound that might have been a sob. When I finally got hold of you the next day, you wouldn't even let me speak. You told me you knew everything, that I disgusted you, that you never wanted to see my lying face again. Amelia's voice remained steady, but tears slid down her cheeks unchecked. So no, Jack, I didn't hide your daughters from you. You hid yourself from us. Willow finished nursing and Amelia held both babies against her chest, one on each shoulder. They were beautiful, their skin a perfect blend of her deep brown and his pale complexion, their hair thick and curling. Identical in so many ways, but already showing different personalities. Violet watching Jack with suspicious awareness. Willow already drifting toward sleep. If you're here to take them, Amelia said, you should know I won't fight you. I can't afford lawyers. I can barely afford to feed them. Your mother was right about one thing. They deserve better than this. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. Look at this place, Jack. I work 2 jobs, and I still can't keep food in the refrigerator. I wear the same 3 outfits because I can't afford more. Every time they get sick, I pray it's nothing serious, because I'm one emergency room visit away from complete ruin. So if you want them, take them. Give them the life I can't. Just promise me you'll keep your mother away from them. Jack crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just short of touching her. I'm not taking them away from you. Then why are you here? I don't know anymore. I thought I was coming here to confront you about hiding my children, about the lawsuit, about everything. But instead, he gestured helplessly at the apartment, at her, at the babies. Instead, I'm standing here realizing I became exactly what I always swore I wouldn't be. I became my mother's weapon. Amelia studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she stood, moving to the cribs with careful precision. She laid each baby down gently, covering them with thin blankets, adjusting their positions until both were comfortable. When she turned back to Jack, her face was composed but empty. Your mother sent you that package, the one with the hospital records. It wasn't a question, but Jack nodded anyway. She's the anonymous sender. She wants you to handle her problem because I'm suing your family, and I won't back down. She thinks you'll either scare me into dropping the lawsuit or buy me off. She doesn't understand that I stopped being afraid of her the day I gave birth alone and survived. Amelia moved to the sink, washing her hands with methodical care. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. You're going to decide what kind of father you want to be. And then, if you choose to come back, you're going to knock like a civilized human being instead of breaking down my door. Amelia. Get out. Jack! She didn't raise her voice, but something in her tone made him move toward the door. Come back tomorrow if you want to talk about the girls. But tonight, I need you gone. I need to figure out how to sleep, knowing you know where we are. Jack paused at the threshold, looking back at the woman he'd married, the woman he'd abandoned, the woman who'd become a mother without him. I'm sorry, I know. But sorry doesn't feed my daughters. Sorry doesn't give me back the 3 years you stole. Sorry doesn't undo the fact that when it mattered most, you chose your mother's lies over my truth. So take your sorry and leave. Come back when you have something more useful to offer. The door closed between them with a quiet click that sounded like thunder. Jack stood in the hallway, staring at the broken lock, the splintered frame, the physical evidence of his violence. Inside the apartment, he heard Amelia begin to cry, deep, wrenching sobs that she must have been holding back the entire time he was there. He pressed his forehead against the door, his own tears finally falling, and wondered if there was any way to build a bridge across the canyon he'd created. Behind the door, one of the twins began to whimper, and Amelia's crying stopped instantly, replaced by soft humming as she comforted her daughter. Jack listened to that lullaby, a melody he didn't recognize, a song that belonged to a life he'd never been part of, and the full weight of everything he'd lost crushed the air from his lungs. Chapter 2. The Aftermath of Truth. Jack didn't leave the building. He couldn't. His legs carried him down one flight of stairs to the landing below Amelia's apartment, and there he sat on cold concrete steps, his back against the wall, his phone clutched in his hand like a lifeline. The screen glowed in the darkness, showing the contact information for his mother, his father, his lawyer. He called none of them. Instead, he began scrolling through his photo gallery, searching for pictures of Amelia from their marriage. There were hundreds. Amelia laughing at their wedding reception, her head thrown back in genuine joy. Amelia curled up on their couch reading, her legs tucked beneath her. Amelia in the kitchen of their home, flour on her cheek, teaching herself to make his grandmother's bread recipe. Every image was a knife twisting in his chest because he could pinpoint the exact moment when he stopped believing in the woman captured in those photographs. His mother had planted the first seeds of doubt 6 months into their marriage. Little comments, carefully worded observations. Darling, I saw Amelia having lunch with a man downtown. I'm sure it was innocent, but you know how people talk. 2 weeks later, another mention. The women at my luncheon were discussing how your wife seems quite friendly with that personal trainer at her gym. I defended her, of course, each poisonous drop adding to a reservoir of suspicion that Jack was ashamed to admit he'd let build inside him. When Eleanor finally presented him with photographs, witness statements, and a paternity test, he'd been primed to believe the worst. He never questioned why his mother would have such comprehensive evidence ready to present. He never asked himself why every witness happened to be someone with connections to his family. He simply accepted the narrative because some dark part of him had been expecting betrayal all along. The stairwell door above him opened, and Jack's heart hammered as footsteps descended. But it wasn't Amelia. It was an elderly woman carrying grocery bags who gave him a long look before continuing past. He heard her knock on a door on the floor below, heard a man's voice welcome her inside. Life continuing normally while his own world burned. Jack finally dialed his private investigator, a man he'd used for years to handle sensitive matters. "I need you to verify something," he said when the call connected. "Everything. I need you to verify everything my mother told me about my wife 3 years ago. I want proof of the paternity test, actual proof, not just documents. I want the names of every witness interviewed and their financial records. I want to know who took the photographs and where they came from. I want the truth." "That's going to take time," the investigator said carefully. "You have 24 hours. I don't care what it costs." Jack ended the call and immediately made another, this one to his father's private line. Richard Michael answered on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" "Did you know?" Jack asked without preamble. "Did you know what Mother did to Amelia?" The silence on the other end stretched so long that Jack thought the call had dropped. Then his father spoke, and his voice carried a weariness that seemed to age him decades. "I knew your mother was unhappy with your choice of wife. I knew she believed Amelia wasn't suitable for our family. But the specifics of what she did? No, your mother has always kept her methods private, even from me. She fabricated everything. The affair, the paternity test, all of it. She destroyed my marriage with lies, and you're telling me you didn't know." "Jack, I have daughters, twin daughters. They're 3 years old and I've never held them. I've never heard them laugh. I don't know if they like music, or if they're afraid of the dark, or what their favorite foods are. And the reason I don't know any of that is because Mother decided my wife wasn't good enough for our family name." His father's breathing became labored. "Twins? Violet and Willow. They have my eyes. They have the family birthmark. They're living in poverty because Amelia can't afford rent and formula in the same week. And she's living in poverty because Mother systematically destroyed every opportunity she had to build a life." Jack's voice cracked. "So I'm asking you again, did you know?" "I swear to you I didn't know about the children. Your mother told me Amelia had moved on, that she was fine, that the separation was clean. She said you were better off without someone who could betray you so easily." Richard paused, and Jack heard ice clinking in a glass. "But I didn't question her too closely, because questioning your mother never ends well for anyone. I'm a coward, Jack. I've always been a coward when it comes to Eleanor. I need you to tell me something, and I need you to be honest. How far would she go to protect what she thinks is best for this family?" "There is no limit," his father said quietly. "There never has been. When your sister wanted to marry that teacher, Eleanor had him transferred to Alaska and made sure he couldn't find work anywhere else. When your brother talked about leaving the family to pursue music, she had his scholarship offers mysteriously rescinded. Your mother believes she's protecting our legacy, but what she's actually doing is destroying everyone who doesn't fit her vision of perfection." Jack closed his eyes. "Amelia's suing the family. Did you know that? Your mother mentioned something about a nuisance lawsuit. She said she'd handle it. That's why she sent me the hospital records. She wants me to make Amelia withdraw the lawsuit. She thinks I'll either threaten her or buy her off." Jack laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Instead, I broke down her door like a monster and stood there while she fed our daughters, and the look in her eyes. Dad, she's not afraid of me. She's not afraid of anything, because she's already survived the worst thing I could do to her. What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but I'm not leaving them again. I'm not walking away from my daughters, and I'm not letting Mother anywhere near them. That's going to be war, son. Your mother doesn't accept defeat gracefully, then there'll be war. Jack ended the call and stood, his muscles protesting after sitting still for so long. He climbed the stairs back to Amelia's floor and stared at her broken door. Light still showed beneath it, which meant she was awake. He raised his hand to knock, then stopped. What right did he have to disturb her rest? What could he possibly say that would matter? Instead, he pulled out his phone and sent a text to his assistant. I need a contractor at this address first thing tomorrow. The door needs to be replaced and reinforced. I don't care what it costs. And send someone with groceries. Everything a mother with infant twins would need. Leave it at the door, don't knock. He added Amelia's address and hit send. Then he sat down on the floor outside her apartment, his back against the opposite wall, and waited for dawn. If she tried to leave, he'd see her. If she needed anything, he'd be there. It wasn't much. It was less than nothing compared to what he owed her. But it was all he knew how to do in this moment. Inside the apartment, he heard one of the twins crying, and Amelia's soft voice soothing her. It's okay, Violet. Mama's here. Mama's always here. The words were a lullaby, and an accusation rolled into one. Jack put his head in his hands and waited for morning, knowing that when it came, he'd have to face the full truth of what his mother had done and what he'd allowed to happen because he'd been too weak to believe in love when it was tested. Chapter 3. The Price of Believing Lies. Dawn broke grey and cold, bleeding pale light through the hallway window. Jack hadn't slept. His suit was wrinkled beyond recognition, his tie discarded somewhere in the night, his shirt collar open. He looked like what he was, a man who'd spent the night on a floor, contemplating the ruins of his life. The building slowly came alive around him. Doors opened and closed. People left for work. A few gave him curious glances, but most ignored him with the practiced indifference of city dwellers who'd learned to mind their own troubles. The contractor arrived at 7, a grizzled man who took one look at Amelia's splintered doorframe and whistled low. Someone was angry. Can you fix it? Jack asked, his voice rough from disuse. Can fix anything with the right motivation. The contractor eyed Jack's expensive watch. Gonna cost you, though. This is rush work, and that frame's got structural damage. I don't care what it costs. Make it secure. Make it so she feels safe. Jack handed over his credit card. When you're done, install the best lock you can get. Something that can't be kicked in. The contractor nodded and got to work, his tools making sharp sounds that echoed in the narrow hallway. 20 minutes later, Amelia's door opened a crack. She peered out, saw Jack sitting against the wall, and her expression cycled through surprise, anger, and finally resignation. You stayed out here all night. I couldn't leave, not knowing you and the girls were behind a broken door. That's not your responsibility anymore. It's exactly my responsibility. I'm the one who broke it. Amelia started to close the door, but the contractor spoke up. Ma'am, I need to remove this door completely to fix the frame. Gonna take a few hours. You might want to keep your babies in the back of the apartment where the noise won't scare them. She studied the contractor, then looked at Jack with an expression that could have frozen fire. You called someone? I couldn't let you live behind a broken door. Stop making decisions for me. Stop fixing things without asking. You don't get to swoop in and save me now, Jack. You don't get to be the hero. I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm trying to... He stopped, searching for words that wouldn't sound like excuses. I'm trying to stop failing you. Amelia disappeared into the apartment without responding. Jack heard her moving around inside, heard the twins babbling in their morning voices, heard her speaking to them in the gentle tones mothers use. When she emerged 10 minutes later, she was dressed in clothes that had clearly seen better years, her hair pulled back in a simple bun, her face bare of makeup. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. I have to go to work, she said, not meeting his eyes. I called my neighbor to watch the girls. You need to be gone when I get back. Where do you work? That's not your concern. Amelia, please. I'm not interrogating you. I'm trying to understand your life. I'm trying to see what these last 3 years have been like for you. You want to understand? She finally looked at him, and the rage in her eyes made him take a step back. Fine. I work the breakfast shift at a diner on 5th Street. Then I go to my second job cleaning offices downtown. I finish around 6 if I'm lucky, later if they need extra help. I come home. I feed my daughters, I bathe them, I put them to bed. And then I stay awake worrying about everything I can't afford to give them. That's my life, Jack. It's not interesting. It's not dramatic. It's just survival. Let me help. No, the word was absolute. Why not? I have resources. I can make your life easier. You can what? Throw money at your guilt. Buy your way into our lives. No, you don't get to waltz back in here and play daddy because you suddenly discovered you have children. You don't get to fix 3 years of abandonment with a checkbook. Jack's hands clenched at his sides. Then what do I get to do? Tell me what I'm allowed to do, because I'm standing here willing to do anything, and you won't let me do nothing. I don't know. Amelia's voice rose, and somewhere in the apartment one of the twins started crying. She closed her eyes, visibly forcing herself back to calm. I don't know what you get to do because I don't trust you. I don't trust that you won't wake up tomorrow and decide this is too hard. I don't trust that your mother won't find some new way to poison your mind against me. I don't trust that you actually want to be here, and not just because you feel obligated. So until I figure out what I can trust, you get to do nothing. She went back inside, and Jack heard her comforting the crying child. Shh, Willow. It's okay, baby girl. Mama's sorry for raising her voice. Everything's okay. The door to the apartment closed, though it couldn't latch properly with the frame being worked on. Jack caught a glimpse of Amelia lifting Willow into her arms, rocking her gently, pressing kisses to her daughter's forehead. The tenderness of it broke something in his chest. His phone buzzed with incoming reports from his investigator. Jack sat back down against the wall and began reading, his blood turning to ice with every page. The paternity test had been fabricated by a lab technician on his mother's payroll. The photographs were taken by actors hired through a modeling agency Eleanor controlled. The witnesses were employees of various Michael family ventures, all of whom received substantial bonuses around the time they gave their statements. But it went deeper than that. Eleanor had used her connections to get Amelia blacklisted from employment. She'd contacted Amelia's landlord and paid him to evict her. She'd spread rumors through social networks that Amelia was unstable, promiscuous, dangerous to employ. She'd even contacted the hospital where Amelia eventually gave birth and tried to have her flagged as a potential child abuser, though that attempt had been rejected by medical staff who saw through Eleanor's manipulations. Jack read about the day his daughters were born. Amelia had arrived at the county hospital in active labor, alone, with no money for a private room. She'd hemorrhaged after delivery, had required emergency intervention, had spent 4 days recovering while nurses helped care for the twins because Amelia was too weak to do it alone. The medical records included notes from a social worker who'd tried to connect Amelia with resources, but Eleanor had even poisoned those wells. The shelters had mysteriously lost Amelia's applications. The assistance programs had found her ineligible due to paperwork that had never actually existed. "Your mother is a monster," Jack said to the empty hallway. His phone rang immediately after, as if Eleanor had heard him. Her name flashed on the screen. He answered with one word. "Why? Darling, I don't know what you mean. Why did you do it? Why did you destroy her?" Eleanor's sigh carried through the phone like silk over steel. "Because she was ruining you. Because you were throwing away everything we'd built for our family to play house with someone who didn't understand our world. Because I love you, and I couldn't watch you diminish yourself. She was my wife. I loved her. You thought you did. You were infatuated. There's a difference. I have daughters, Mother. Twin daughters. They're 3 years old, and they've been living in poverty while you've been playing puppet master with my life." The pause on Eleanor's end was brief, but telling. "I see you've received the package. That was meant to motivate you to handle the lawsuit situation, not to become sentimental." "Handle the situation? You mean threaten her, intimidate her into dropping her very legitimate case against our family?" "And if necessary, yes. She's making claims that could damage our reputation. I need you to make this go away, Jack. Use whatever leverage you need to use. The leverage is that I'm the father of her children. The leverage is that you destroyed her life with systematic cruelty that would make medieval torturers blush. The leverage is that everything she's claiming in that lawsuit is absolutely true. And if this goes to trial, the entire world will know what you did. Don't be naive. No court will side with her over us. We have the best lawyers money can buy. Maybe, but I won't let you bury this. I won't let you bury her. Jack's voice dropped to something dangerous. Stay away from Amelia. Stay away from my daughters. If I find out you've contacted them, if I discover you've interfered in any way, I will personally make sure every detail of what you did becomes public record. You wouldn't dare. That would destroy our family's reputation. Then I guess you'd better hope I never find out you've gone near them again. Jack ended the call and immediately blocked his mother's number. Then he called his lawyer and instructed him to add his name to Amelia's lawsuit as a supporting witness. If his mother wanted war, she'd get war, but not against Amelia, against him. The neighbor arrived to watch the twins, a kind-faced woman who gave Jack a thorough once-over before entering Amelia's apartment. Amelia emerged ready for work, refusing to even glance in his direction. She left without a word, and Jack followed her, not closely, not obviously. But he followed her to the diner on 5th Street and took a seat in a corner booth where he could watch her work. She moved between tables with efficiency, refilling coffee, taking orders, delivering food. Her smile for customers was professional but empty. No one saw the exhaustion behind it. No one saw the way she winced when she bent down, or how her hands trembled slightly when she poured coffee. But Jack saw it all, and with each observation, the weight of his guilt grew heavier. This was the life he'd condemned her to. This was the price she'd paid for loving him. And no amount of money, no gesture of contrition, no promise of change could give her back what he'd stolen. Chapter 4. The Mother's War. Eleanor Michael stood in Amelia's apartment as if she owned it, her designer suit and perfect posture a stark contrast to the shabby surroundings. She'd arrived with her lawyer, a severe man carrying a briefcase full of contracts. Jack found them there when he came back with takeout food, having finally left his surveillance post at the diner when Amelia finished her first shift. The sight of his mother in that apartment near his daughters made his vision narrow to pinpoints. "Get out!" His voice was barely above a whisper. Eleanor turned, her smile sharp as broken glass. "Darling, I'm simply here to make a very generous offer. $10 million for Miss Johnson to relinquish all parental rights and relocate somewhere more suitable to her station. It's more than fair." Amelia sat in the rocking chair holding both twins, her face expressionless. She hadn't said a word yet, and somehow that silence was more terrifying than screaming would have been. Violet and Willow seemed to sense the tension, their little faces scrunched in confusion as they looked between the adults. "I said get out." Jack stepped between his mother and Amelia, physically blocking Eleanor's view of his daughters. "Don't be dramatic. I'm solving a problem. This woman has been a drain on our family resources through her frivolous lawsuit. I'm offering her an extremely generous settlement, and in return, she disappears. Everyone wins. Everyone wins." Jack's laugh was hollow. "You're trying to buy my daughters away from their mother, and you think everyone wins. These children deserve stability. They deserve education, opportunities, a life without struggle. Look at this place, Jack. Look at how she's living. Is this what you want for your children? Poverty, uncertainty? A mother who works herself into exhaustion just to keep a roof over their heads. The only reason she's living like this is because you made it impossible for her to live any other way." Jack's voice rose, and Willow started to whimper. He forced himself to breathe, to lower his volume. "You orchestrated her poverty. You destroyed her career opportunities. You isolated her from every support system. And now you want to use that suffering you caused, as justification to take her children away?" Eleanor's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind her eyes. I did what was necessary to protect you from making a mistake that would haunt you forever. If I'd known there were children involved, I might have approached things differently. But the past is done. Now we deal with present reality. The present reality is that you're a manipulative, cruel woman who destroyed lives because someone didn't meet your standards. Jack turned to his mother's lawyer. Leave, now. And if you or anyone in your firm ever contacts Amelia again with this garbage, I'll personally make sure you're disbarred. The lawyer glanced at Eleanor, who gave a minute shake of her head. We're not leaving until we get an answer. Amelia finally spoke, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Your son already told you to leave my home. That's the only answer you're getting. You'd rather live like this? Eleanor gestured dismissively at the apartment. You'd rather struggle and starve than accept help? That's not love, dear. That's pride, and pride is a luxury you can't afford. You call this help? Amelia stood carefully, still holding both babies. You systematically destroyed my life, made it impossible for me to work or live with dignity, and now you offer me money to abandon my children. That's not help. That's you trying to buy away your son's guilt and your own culpability. I'm offering you freedom. Freedom from responsibility you're clearly not equipped to handle. Those babies deserve more than a mother who can barely feed them. They deserve more than a grandmother who thinks love can be bought and sold like commodities. Amelia's voice remained steady, but her eyes blazed. They deserve more than being raised by a woman so poisoned by her own sense of superiority that she destroyed a marriage to preserve her precious family image. Eleanor took a step forward, and Jack moved with her, maintaining his position between his mother and his family. Mother, I'm warning you. Leave now, or what? You'll cut me off? Disown me? Don't be absurd. I'm your mother. You can't simply walk away from family. Watch me. Jack pulled out his phone and called security at his family estate. This is Jack Michael. I'm authorizing a change to the security protocols. Eleanor Michael is no longer to have access to any property I control. If she attempts entry, call the police. He ended the call and looked at his mother. You're done. You're done manipulating my life. You're done hurting the people I love. You're done pretending your cruelty is somehow justified by love. You're making a mistake. Eleanor's composure finally cracked, her voice rising. That woman is using those babies to trap you. She's probably not even certain you're the father. Have you seen legitimate paternity tests? Have you verified anything she claims? I've verified everything, including the fact that you're a liar who fabricated evidence to destroy my marriage, including the fact that you paid off doctors, hired actors, and bribed witnesses, including the fact that you nearly killed Amelia through your systematic destruction of every opportunity she had to survive. Eleanor's face paled, but she recovered quickly. I did what any mother would do to protect her child from making a catastrophic mistake. No, Amelia's voice cut through again. You did what a narcissist does when someone threatens their control. You couldn't stand that your son chose someone you didn't approve of, so you destroyed that choice. And when that wasn't enough, you tried to make sure I suffered as much as possible for daring to love him. Don't you dare psychoanalyze me. You have no idea what I've sacrificed for this family. You're right. I don't know what you've sacrificed, but I know what you've taken. You took 3 years of my husband's life. You took his presence when his daughters were born. You took my ability to provide for my children. You took everything I had, and you did it because you could. Because you're so twisted inside that you think cruelty is the same as love. Eleanor's hand shot out, striking Amelia across the face before Jack could react. The sound of the slap echoed in the apartment. Violet and Willow both began crying immediately, and Amelia stumbled back, one hand going to her cheek while she held the twins close with the other arm. Jack grabbed his mother's wrist, his grip tight enough to leave marks. Get out of here before I forget you're my mother and call the police myself. This isn't over, Eleanor hissed. You think you can just cut me out? I built everything you have, everything you are. You're nothing without me. Then I'll be nothing. At least I'll be nothing with a clear conscience. Jack physically guided his mother toward the door, the lawyer scrambling to follow. Don't come back. Don't call. Don't send messages through other people. You're dead to me until you can look at what you've done and actually feel remorse instead of justification. He shoved them both into the hallway and closed the door. Still broken, still being repaired, but enough of a barrier. Through the thin wood, he heard his mother's sharp intake of breath, heard her heels clicking away down the hallway. Then he turned to find Amelia sitting back in the rocking chair, soothing the twins, while tears streamed down her face. Her cheek was already reddening where Eleanor had struck her. "I'm sorry," Jack said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry she put her hands on you." "Get out." Amelia's voice was hollow. "Amelia, get out. I can't look at you right now. Every time I look at you, I see her. I see how you believed her instead of me. I see how you let her do this to us. So please, just leave. I can't leave you like this. Not after what just happened. You've left me in worse circumstances than this. One more time won't make any difference." She looked up at him, and the emptiness in her eyes was worse than any accusation. "Your mother only has power because you gave it to her. Because when it came down to choosing between her lies and my truth, you chose her. You made that choice, Jack, not her. You. So yes, she's a monster. But you're the one who let the monster eat me alive." The words hit him like physical blows. Jack wanted to argue, wanted to explain, wanted to make her understand that he'd been manipulated. But all of those explanations sounded like excuses, and Amelia was right. He had made the choice. He'd chosen to believe. He'd chosen to walk away. He'd chosen his mother's approval over his wife's word. And no amount of retroactive knowledge about Eleanor's manipulations changed the fundamental truth that when Amelia had needed him to trust her, he'd failed. "I'll go," he said quietly. "But I'll be outside. And I'm not leaving again. Not for good. I know you don't want me here. I know I don't deserve to be part of your life. But those are my daughters, and I'm not abandoning them again. So I'll stay away from you as much as possible, but I won't disappear." Amelia didn't respond. She simply sat there, rocking her crying babies, her cheek red from his mother's violence, her face wet with tears she'd held back for years. Jack left the apartment and sank down onto the floor outside, putting his head in his hands. Inside, he could hear Amelia singing to the twins, the same lullaby from the night before, her voice cracking on every note. The contractor returned with replacement door parts and gave Jack a long look, but said nothing. Some things were too broken for strangers to comment on. Some wounds were too deep for anything but time. And Jack was beginning to understand that time might never be enough to heal what he'd destroyed. Chapter 5. The Breaking Point. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange limbo. Jack rented an apartment in the same building, 3 floors below Amelia's unit. He wasn't close enough to be intrusive, but he was close enough to respond if something went wrong. Every morning he watched Amelia leave for work. Every evening he listened to her return. He never approached her directly. Instead, he began leaving things at her door when she wasn't there, groceries that appeared without explanation, diapers in the right size, formula she hadn't asked for. The first few times Amelia ignored them. Then she started taking them inside, though she never acknowledged where they came from. Jack hired a nanny service to offer their assistance, positioning it as a community program for single mothers rather than something he'd arranged. Amelia accepted skeptically, allowing a woman named Dorothy to help with the twins for a few hours each day. It wasn't much, but it was something. It meant Amelia could sleep more than 4 hours a night. It meant she could sometimes eat a meal without a baby in her arms. What Jack didn't do was try to force his way into their lives. He didn't demand custody arrangements or visitation schedules. He simply existed in the periphery, making himself useful without making himself unavoidable. It was the hardest thing he'd ever done, being so close to his daughters without being able to hold them, hearing their voices through the walls without being able to speak to them, knowing they were growing and changing without him being part of those changes. He spent his days gathering evidence for Amelia's lawsuit, building an airtight case against his own family. He spent his nights staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of life happening in the apartment above him. Sometimes he heard laughter, sometimes he heard crying. Once he heard Amelia talking on the phone with someone, her voice animated in a way he'd never heard during their brief interactions. The jealousy that shot through him was sharp and unwelcome. She had a life beyond their shared tragedy. She had friends, connections, moments of joy that had nothing to do with him. He'd lost the right to be part of those moments the day he'd walked out believing his mother's lies. Everything changed on a rainy Tuesday evening. Jack was leaving the building when he heard raised voices from Amelia's floor. He took the stairs two at a time, arriving to find Amelia in the hallway, arguing with a man in a suit who was attempting to serve her with legal documents. "I'm not accepting this," Amelia was saying, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Ma'am, you don't have a choice. You've been formally served." The process server tried to hand her the papers again. Jack stepped between them. "What's going on?" "This doesn't concern you," Amelia said, but her voice shook. Jack took the papers from the server, who looked relieved to be off the hook. His eyes scanned the legal text and his blood turned to ice. Eviction notice. 30 days. Amelia's landlord was claiming she'd violated her lease terms, though the violations listed were vague and likely fabricated. "When did you last pay rent?" Jack asked quietly. "That's none of your business." "Amelia, when?" I'm 2 weeks late." "Just 2 weeks. I had to choose between rent and taking Willow to the doctor when she had that ear infection. I chose my daughter. I was going to pay when I got my next check, but apparently 2 weeks is enough to—" Her voice broke. "It doesn't matter. I'll figure it out." Jack looked at the papers again, noting the law firm representing the landlord. It was a boutique firm known for taking on exactly this kind of case, evicting tenants on behalf of wealthy clients who wanted people gone without getting their hands dirty. "My mother is behind this." "What?" "Look at the firm. Feldman and Associates. They're on retainer for my family. My mother is having you evicted." Amelia grabbed the papers from his hands, her eyes scanning them with growing horror. "She can't do this. I have children. There are laws protecting families with small children from eviction without cause." "There are. But those laws require you to have a lawyer to enforce them, and I'm guessing you can't afford one." Jack pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my lawyer right now. We'll fight this." "No." Amelia snatched his phone away. "I don't want your help. I don't want your money. I don't want anything from you or your family. You're being evicted. Where are you going to go?" "I don't know. A shelter, maybe. Or I'll find someone who'll rent to me month to month until I can get ahead. But I'm not taking help from you. Every time I take something from you, it's like accepting that what happened was okay. That you walking out was just a misunderstanding. That 3 years of hell was just bad luck. This isn't about us. This is about keeping a roof over my daughters' heads." "Your daughters?" "They became your daughters 2 weeks ago. Where were you before that?" Amelia's voice rose, and doors started opening along the hallway. Neighbors peering out at the commotion. "Where were you when I was giving birth alone? Where were you when I couldn't afford formula and had to water it down to make it last? Where were you when I sat up all night with sick babies because I couldn't afford to take them to the doctor? You don't get to call them your daughters now and act like that gives you rights." "You're right." Jack's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I wasn't there. I should have been, but I wasn't, and I can't change that. But I'm here now, and I'm watching you struggle with problems my family created, and I can fix this." "Let me fix this." "Fix what?" "The eviction. Then what?" "Your mother will come after me some other way. She'll get me fired. She'll hurt someone I care about. She won't stop until I'm completely destroyed or until I disappear with the twins. That's what she wants, for me to run so far away that you never have to think about us again." "Well, I'm not running." "I'm going to fight this eviction, and I'm going to fight your family in court. And I'm going to win because I'm right and you're all wrong. You can't fight this alone." Watch me. Amelia turned toward her apartment, then stopped. I need you to leave, Jack, not just right now. I need you to leave us alone. Every time I see you, it hurts. Every time I hear your voice, I remember what it was like to love you. And I can't keep remembering that because it makes me weak. I have to be strong for Violet and Willow. I have to be strong enough for both parents. So please, just go. I can't do that. Why not? You did it before. The words were a knife to the heart. Jack stepped back as if physically struck. That's not fair. None of this is fair. What's not fair is that I believed in you. What's not fair is that I loved you so much I couldn't imagine a world where you'd abandon me. What's not fair is that our daughters will grow up knowing their father chose his mother's lies over their existence. Amelia's face crumpled, all her carefully maintained composure shattering. What's not fair is that I wake up every morning hoping I'll stop loving you, and instead I just love you more, because now I see you trying. I see you leaving groceries. I see you hiring Dorothy. I see you staying close without pushing. And it would be so much easier if you were still the monster who left, because I know how to hate a monster. But you're not a monster anymore. You're just a man who made a terrible mistake. And I don't know how to hate that. I don't know how to protect myself from that. Jack reached for her without thinking, and this time she didn't pull away. His hands landed on her shoulders, and she collapsed forward against his chest, sobbing with the kind of anguish that comes from holding pain too long. He wrapped his arms around her carefully, as if she might break, and felt his own tears falling into her hair. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I know it doesn't help. I know it doesn't change anything. But I need you to know that I'm sorry every second of every day. I'm sorry I believed the lies. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to trust you. I'm sorry our daughters had to suffer because I was weak." Amelia cried against him for long minutes, her hands clutching his shirt, her whole body shaking. Then she pushed away, wiping her eyes roughly. "Sorry doesn't make me less angry. Sorry doesn't make me trust you again. I know, but I'm tired of fighting alone. I'm so tired, Jack. I'm tired of being strong. I'm tired of making every decision by myself. I'm tired of lying awake wondering if I'm doing everything wrong. So if you want to help, then help. Fight the eviction. Pay for a lawyer. Do whatever you have to do. But don't think that makes us okay. Don't think that means I forgive you. And don't think that giving me money erases what you did. I don't think any of that. I just want you and the girls to be safe." Amelia nodded tiredly and went into her apartment, closing the door quietly behind her. Jack stood in the hallway holding the eviction papers, his shirt damp with her tears, and felt something shift inside him. This wasn't about earning forgiveness. This wasn't about fixing the past. This was about showing up for the future day after day, regardless of whether Amelia ever let him back into her heart. He pulled out his phone and made a series of calls to his lawyer, to his accountant, to a real estate agent he trusted. By morning, he'd purchased the entire building. Amelia's eviction notice was void because Jack was now her landlord and he wasn't evicting anyone. It wasn't a solution to their larger problems. It wasn't reconciliation or healing. It was just one small thing he could do to make her life slightly less impossible. And if that was all he ever got to do, then he'd do it and consider himself lucky to have the chance. Chapter 6. The Daughter's Awakening. Violet and Willow were old enough now to understand that something had changed in their world. There had always been just Mama. Mama who fed them, Mama who sang to them, Mama who kissed their foreheads and made the world feel safe. But now there was a man who appeared sometimes, who Mama spoke to in a tight voice, who brought toys they weren't allowed to play with until Mama inspected them thoroughly. Jack first got to truly interact with his daughters on a Saturday morning. 3 weeks after the eviction notice had been rescinded, Dorothy had convinced Amelia to take a few hours to herself, insisting that the twins would be fine in the apartment while she supervised. Jack had been there helping Dorothy with basic repairs, a leaking faucet, a window that wouldn't close properly. When Amelia left, Her face drawn with exhaustion and reluctance, the twins watched her go and then turned their attention to the strange man with the tools. "Who?" Violet asked, pointing at Jack with one chubby finger. Dorothy smiled. "That's your daddy, sweetheart. Can you say daddy?" "No!" Violet shook her head decisively. Mama's coming back," Jack said, his voice catching. "I promise." She just went to rest for a little while. Willow, bolder than her sister, toddled over to where Jack sat on the floor. She studied him with serious eyes that were exactly like looking in a mirror. Then she reached out and patted his cheek with her small hand. Sad. The question destroyed him. Jack nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Willow's face scrunched in concentration, and then she wrapped her arms around his neck in an awkward hug. The gesture was so innocent, so freely given, that Jack felt something crack inside his chest. He hugged her back gently, terrified of doing it wrong, amazed that this tiny person existed and was his. "There now," Dorothy said softly. "See, Violet? Daddy's not scary. He's just sad like Mama sometimes." Violet remained skeptical, watching from her position near the couch. But after a few minutes, curiosity won out. She brought over a battered picture book and climbed into Jack's lap with determination. "Read." It was a command, not a request. Jack opened the book, something about a caterpillar who ate too much, and began reading. His voice shook at first, stumbling over simple words because his brain couldn't process that he was reading to his daughters. But as he continued, both girls settled against him, Violet on one knee and Willow on the other, their warm weight grounding him to reality. He read the book 3 times because they demanded it. Then Violet wanted a different book. Then Willow needed her stuffed rabbit. Then they both wanted juice, and Jack had to figure out how to navigate the kitchenette to find cups and pour without spilling. Every task was monumental. Every moment felt like he was defusing a bomb. One wrong move, and everything would explode. But Dorothy was patient, showing him how Violet liked her juice watered down, and how Willow needed her rabbit positioned just right, or she'd fuss. "You're doing fine," Dorothy said, when Jack apologized for his clumsiness for the 5th time. "Being a parent isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up and trying. I haven't shown up for 3 years. No, you haven't, but you're here now." Dorothy settled into the rocking chair, her weathered hands folded in her lap. "I've known Amelia for a while now. Been helping where I could. And I've watched that girl survive things that would have broken most people. She's stronger than anyone I've ever met. But strength like that comes at a cost. She doesn't let anyone in anymore. She doesn't trust that good things can last. So if you're serious about being in their lives, you need to be patient. You need to understand that trust is earned in inches, not miles." Jack looked down at his daughters, who were now playing with blocks nearby, stacking them and knocking them down with delighted giggles. "I don't know if she'll ever trust me again. I don't know if she should. Maybe she won't. Maybe the marriage is dead and buried. But that doesn't mean you can't be a good father. Those girls need you, whether their mama can admit it or not. They need to know they have a daddy who shows up, who keeps promises, who loves them no matter what." "What if I fail again? What if I let them down? Then you'll deal with that when it happens. But sitting here worrying about future failures instead of living in this moment, that's just another way of abandoning them." The words hit home. Jack got down on the floor with his daughters and began building block towers for them to knock down. He learned that Violet was methodical, carefully placing each block with precision. Willow was chaotic, grabbing handfuls and tossing them. He learned that they had different laughs. Violet's was quiet and surprised. Willow's was loud and delighted. He learned that they both had the same birthmark he had, though Violet's was slightly darker. He learned 1,000 tiny details that fathers usually absorb over years, and every discovery felt like both a gift and a loss. When Amelia returned 4 hours later, she found Jack on the floor, covered in stickers that the twins had applied with enthusiastic imprecision. Violet was asleep on his chest, her thumb in her mouth. Willow was showing him a picture she'd scribbled, explaining in her limited vocabulary that it was a kitty, though it looked more like aggressive scribbles. Amelia froze in the doorway, her face cycling through emotions too quickly for Jack to read. They fell asleep. Violet did. Willow still going strong. Jack carefully shifted Violet to a more comfortable position. She's relentless. I don't know where she gets her energy. From me, probably. I couldn't sit still when I was little. Amelia moved into the apartment, setting down a bag from the pharmacy. Thank you for staying with them. I wanted to. I want to be here whenever you'll let me. I can see that. Amelia sank onto the couch, rubbing her temples. It's confusing for them, though. They don't understand who you are or why you're suddenly around. Violet asked me this morning if you were going to take them away. Jack's heart dropped. I would never... I know, but she doesn't know that. She just knows that sometimes there's this man who Mama acts strange around. And kids pick up on everything. They know I'm tense when you're here. They know something's different. What do you want me to do? I can back off if that's what's better for them. Amelia was quiet for a long moment, watching Willow show Jack her picture for the third time. I don't know what I want anymore. I thought I wanted you gone. I thought I wanted to do this alone forever. But seeing you with them, her voice trailed off. They need a father. I can't be everything they need, no matter how hard I try. So maybe we need to figure out what this looks like. Not us. Just you and them. Okay, Jack didn't push for more. Whatever you're comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with any of this. But I'm trying to be practical. I'm trying to think about what's best for Violet and Willow, not what makes me feel safest. Amelia leaned back against the couch, closing her eyes. Can you put Violet in her crib? I need to feed Willow before she gets too wound up to eat. Jack stood carefully, cradling Violet against his chest. She stirred slightly, making a small sound, but didn't wake. He laid her down in her crib, with the kind of reverence usually reserved for priceless artifacts, adjusting her blanket, making sure her stuffed toy was within reach. When he turned around, Amelia was watching him with an expression he couldn't decipher. You're good with them, she said quietly. I'm terrified I'm doing everything wrong. Welcome to parenting. That feeling never goes away. Amelia held out her arms for Willow, who climbed into her lap willingly. But you try anyway. You mess up and you apologize and you try again. That's all any of us can do. Jack wondered if she was talking about more than just parenting, but he didn't ask. Instead, he gathered his tools and prepared to leave, giving Amelia space to care for their daughter. At the door, he paused. Thank you for letting me stay today. It meant everything. Amelia didn't respond, but her eyes met his for a brief moment, and in that look was something that might have been the beginning of understanding. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just acknowledgement that they were both trying to navigate impossible terrain, and maybe that was enough for now. Chapter 7. The Excavation of Memory. The emergency room was too bright, the fluorescent lights humming overhead like angry insects. Jack sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, Violet asleep in his arms, while across the room, Amelia paced with Willow's hospital bassinet. Their daughter lay behind clear plastic IVs in her tiny arm, her fever finally breaking after hours of panic and medical intervention. It had started with Willow being fussier than usual. By evening, she was burning up, her temperature spiking to dangerous levels that had sent Amelia into a controlled panic. She'd called Jack because calling an ambulance was expensive, and he'd driven them to the hospital, going faster than was safe or legal. Now, in the aftermath of crisis, they were left alone together in the strange intimacy that hospitals create. She's going to be okay, Amelia said for the 10th time, as if repetition would make it more true. The doctor said the fever's broken. It was just a bad virus. She's going to be fine. She is, Jack agreed quietly. Violet shifted in his arms, her hand curling against his shirt. She'd refused to let him put her down since they'd arrived, as if sensing her sister needed her to be brave. Amelia finally stopped pacing and sank into the chair beside Jack, her head falling back against the wall. I thought I was going to lose her. When her temperature hit that number, I thought... Her voice broke. But you didn't. She's right there and she's getting better. This time. But what about next time? What about all the times I can't afford to bring them in fast enough? What if I miss something important because I'm too tired to think straight? Jack shifted Violet to one arm and reached out with his free hand, hesitating before placing it on Amelia's. She didn't pull away. You didn't miss anything. You called me the second you knew something was wrong. You got her here. You did everything right. I was terrified. The admission seemed to cost her something. I've been terrified every day since they were born. Terrified I'm not enough. Terrified I'll fail them the way... She stopped abruptly. The way I failed all of you. Amelia turned to look at him, and in the harsh hospital lighting, he could see every line of exhaustion on her face, every shadow under her eyes. Yes, the way you failed us. But also the way I'm failing them, by being so angry I can't let anyone help. By being so hurt I push away the only person who actually wants to be here. You're not pushing me away. You're protecting yourself. There's a difference, is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like I'm punishing you by punishing myself. And the twins are caught in the middle. The silence stretched between them, filled only by hospital sounds, beeping monitors, distant conversations, the wheeze of ventilation systems. Jack looked down at Violet, her face peaceful in sleep, and thought about all the nights he'd missed. All the times Amelia had sat alone with sick babies, terrified and exhausted, while he'd been living his life believing he was the victim. Tell me about when they were born, he said quietly. Jack. Please. I need to know. I need to understand what you went through. Amelia was quiet for so long, he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, her voice soft and distant, she began speaking. I went into labor 3 weeks early. I was at work, cleaning offices, and my water broke while I was vacuuming. I thought I had time. The books all said first babies take forever, and I was having twins, so I thought maybe I had even more time. But the contractions came hard and fast. I called a cab because I couldn't afford an ambulance. Jack's hand tightened on hers, but he didn't interrupt. The cab driver was kind. He kept asking if I was okay, if I needed him to stop. I remember gripping the door handle so hard, I thought I'd break it. When we got to the hospital, they took one look at me and rushed me in. Everything happened so fast. They were trying to get information, asking about insurance, about emergency contacts, and I had no answers they wanted to hear. No insurance, no family, no one coming. Amelia, let me finish. Her voice was steady now, as if she'd moved beyond emotion into simple recitation of facts. Violet was born first. She came out crying, and it was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Then Willow came, quieter, smaller. They put them on my chest for just a moment before taking them away to check them over. And I remember lying there, alone in that delivery room, thinking that this should have been the happiest day of my life. This should have been us together, crying and laughing and meeting our babies. But instead, it was just me bleeding out on a table while nurses shouted medical terms I didn't understand. Jack felt tears streaming down his face, but he stayed silent. I hemorrhaged. Something went wrong. And suddenly there were more people in the room, and everyone was moving fast, and someone was putting a mask over my face. I remember thinking that I couldn't die. I couldn't leave those babies alone. They needed me. No one else was coming for them, so I had to survive. I had to. Amelia's voice finally cracked. I woke up 2 days later. They told me I'd almost died. They told me the twins were in the NICU because they were early and small. They told me I couldn't see them yet because I was too weak to walk. So I lay there in that hospital bed, in a ward with other mothers who had visitors and flowers and joy, and I had nothing. No one came. No one called. It was like I'd disappeared from the world. And the only proof I still existed was the pain in my body and the milk that came in with no babies to feed. Oh, God. Jack couldn't hold back anymore. He carefully laid Violet in the chair beside him and pulled Amelia into his arms. She didn't resist, simply collapsed against him, her tears finally falling after being held back for years. I spent 4 days in that hospital, she continued, her voice muffled against his chest. 4 days watching other mothers leave with their babies while mine stayed in the NICU. When I finally got to hold them, I cried so hard the nurses thought something was wrong. But nothing was wrong. Everything was finally right. I had my girls. They were mine. And I promised them that day that I would never let anyone hurt them. I would never let anyone make them feel unwanted or unloved or like they were mistakes. They're not mistakes. Jack pulled back enough to look at her face. They're the most beautiful, perfect things I've ever seen. And you're right, I wasn't there. I should have been and I wasn't. But I'm here now, and I swear to you, Amelia, I swear on everything I have that I will never walk away from them again. What about me? The question was barely a whisper. Can you swear you won't walk away from me? Jack opened his mouth, then closed it. Because the honest answer was that he didn't know. He wanted to promise. He wanted to say he'd never leave, never doubt, never fail her again. But those were the kinds of promises he'd made before, and he'd broken everyone. I can't promise I won't mess up again. I can't promise I'll always get it right, but I can promise that I'll try. I can promise that I'll fight to be better. And I can promise that even if you never forgive me, even if you never let me back into your heart, I'll still be here for our daughters. That's not enough. I know, but it's all I have right now. Amelia looked over at Willow's bassinet, where their daughter slept peacefully now, her fever gone, her breathing steady. When I thought we might lose her tonight, you know what my first thought was? Not that I'd have to handle it alone. My first thought was that I'm glad you were there. I'm glad I didn't have to drive here by myself while trying to keep her calm. I'm glad I had someone to share the fear with. She turned back to Jack, and that terrifies me, because needing you again means you can hurt me again. It means I'm vulnerable, and I don't know if I can survive being that vulnerable. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You survived things that would have broken me. You survived things I caused. So I understand why you can't trust me. I understand why you're terrified. But I'm going to keep showing up anyway, because maybe one day you'll see that I'm not the same person who left. Maybe one day you'll believe that I've changed. Or maybe I'll just get used to you being around and forget why I was angry in the first place. Maybe time will make me soft and I'll let you back in. And then something will happen, and you'll believe someone else instead of me, and we'll be right back where we started. That won't happen. You don't know that. You can't know that. You're right. I can't know the future. But I know who I am now, and the person I am now would burn down the world before I doubt you again. They sat in silence for a while, Violet sleeping peacefully in her chair, Willow breathing steadily in her bassinet, and two broken adults trying to figure out if healing was even possible. A nurse came in to check Willow's vitals and told them they could probably go home in a few hours. Amelia nodded, her exhaustion evident in every line of her body. Jack wanted to tell her to rest, that he'd watch over their daughters, but he knew she wouldn't sleep. She'd proved that she couldn't trust anyone else to keep them safe. So instead, he sat with her in silence, their hands still linked, and waited for dawn. Chapter 8. The Reckoning with Eleanor. The legal documents arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a process server who looked apologetic about the whole situation. Eleanor Michael was filing for grandparents' rights, seeking partial custody of Violet and Willow on the grounds that Amelia was an unfit mother and that the children deserved access to their extended family and the opportunities that came with the Michael name. Jack was with Amelia when she opened the envelope. He watched the color drain from her face as she read through the allegations. Failure to provide adequate living conditions, financial instability, isolation from family support systems, denial of the children's right to know their heritage. Each accusation was technically true, but stripped of all context. Yes, Amelia's apartment was small, but it was clean and safe. Yes, she struggled financially, but she always managed to provide for the twins. Yes, she kept them away from the Michael family, but that was because the Michael family had actively tried to destroy her. "She can't do this," Amelia said, her voice shaking. "She can't take them from me." "She won't." Jack took the papers from her trembling hands. "I won't let her. You can't stop her. She's your mother. She has money and lawyers and I have more. I have truth on my side, and I have documentation of everything she did. We're going to fight this, and we're going to win." Amelia sank onto the couch, her face in her hands. "This is my worst nightmare. This is what I've been terrified of since the day I found out I was pregnant. That someone would decide I'm not good enough and take them away." Jack knelt in front of her, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Listen to me. No court in the world is going to take children away from a mother who has done everything you've done. You kept them alive when you had nothing. You protected them when everyone else abandoned them. You're not just good enough, you're extraordinary. But what if the court doesn't see it that way? What if they look at her wealth and her resources and decide the twins would be better off with her? What if I lose them because I can't afford a lawyer good enough to fight her? You're not fighting alone. I'm fighting with you. We're going to expose every single thing my mother did. We're going to show the court exactly who she is and what she's capable of. And when we're done, she won't just lose this case. She'll lose everything." The next weeks were a blur of legal meetings, document gathering, and strategic planning. Jack hired the most aggressive family law attorney in the state, a woman who had built her reputation on destroying grandparents' rights cases. They compiled evidence, medical records showing Amelia's dedication to the twins' health, testimony from Dorothy and other neighbors about her character, documentation of Eleanor's interference in Amelia's life, bank records showing the payments Eleanor had made to destroy their marriage. But the real breakthrough came when Jack's private investigator uncovered something unexpected. Eleanor had done this before. 20 years ago, she'd attempted to gain custody of Jack's sister's child when his sister tried to leave the family. The case had been settled quietly, sealed from public record, but the investigator found the lawyer who'd handled it. That lawyer, now retired, and with no loyalty to the Michael family, was willing to testify about Eleanor's pattern of using legal action to control family members who defied her wishes. The custody hearing was set for 6 weeks out. In that time, Jack moved through his life with single-minded focus. He attended every doctor's appointment with the twins. He learned their routines, their preferences, their fears. He documented every interaction, creating a paper trail that showed he was an involved, present father. More importantly, he began the process of legally separating himself from his family's assets. He couldn't control what Eleanor did with the family fortune, but he could make sure his personal wealth was completely independent of her influence. The breaking point came when Eleanor made one final miscalculation. She showed up at the twins' daycare, claiming to be picking them up on Jack's behalf. The daycare called Amelia immediately, and she arrived to find Eleanor arguing with staff members about her right to see her grandchildren. Jack got there 10 minutes later, having been called by a frantic Amelia, and found his mother holding Violet while Willow cried in a caretaker's arms. "Put her down." Jack's voice was deadly quiet. "She's my granddaughter. I have every right to—" "You have no rights. The court hasn't granted you anything yet, and kidnapping my daughter isn't going to help your case." "Kidnapping? Don't be ridiculous. I'm simply trying to meet my grandchildren before your little lawsuit paints me as some kind of monster." "You don't need me to paint you as anything. You do that all on your own." Jack gently took Violet from Eleanor's arms, passing her to Amelia, who immediately clutched both twins close. "This is over, Mother. You need to accept that. Nothing is over until the court makes its ruling. And when they see how unstable she is, how she's poisoning those children against their own family—" "The only person poisoning anything is you." Jack's father appeared in the doorway, his face drawn and grey. "Eleanor, that's enough." Eleanor spun to face her husband, shock evident in her expression. "What are you doing here?" "I came to stop you from making this worse than it already is." Richard Michael looked older than Jack had ever seen him, defeated in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. I've filed for divorce. I've also instructed our lawyers to inform the court that I will be testifying on behalf of Amelia in your custody case. I will not stand by and watch you destroy another family. You wouldn't dare. I made you. Everything you have is because of me and my family's connections. Then I'll lose everything. But I won't be complicit in this anymore. I've watched you manipulate and control everyone around us for years. I told myself it was for the good of the family. I told myself you were just protective. But what you did to Jack and Amelia, what you're trying to do to those babies, that's not protection. That's cruelty. Richard's voice cracked. I'm ashamed I didn't stop you sooner. I'm ashamed I let it get this far. Eleanor's composed facade finally shattered. You're choosing them over me? Over our family? There is no family when it's built on lies and manipulation. There's just you, controlling everyone around you because you're terrified of being alone. Well, now you will be alone, because I'm done. The custody hearing happened 2 weeks later. Eleanor's lawyers presented their case. The financial instability, the small apartment, the lack of traditional family support. They painted Amelia as a struggling single mother who couldn't provide the opportunities the twins deserved. They argued that the Michael family could give the children education, travel, culture, everything that money could buy. Then Jack's lawyer stood up and systematically destroyed every argument. She presented the evidence of Eleanor's fabrications, the witness testimony about the destroyed marriage, the documentation of systematic harassment. She called the retired lawyer who testified about Eleanor's previous attempt to control family members through custody battles. She called medical professionals who testified to Amelia's dedication as a mother. She called neighbors who spoke about Amelia's character, her resilience, her love for her children. Finally, she called Jack himself to the stand. He testified about how he'd been manipulated, about discovering the truth, about watching Amelia survive against impossible odds. He testified about the hospital records from the twins' birth, about finding his daughters in poverty while he'd been living in comfort built on lies. He testified that he supported Amelia's custody completely, and that he believed his mother should have no contact with the twins until she received extensive psychological treatment and demonstrated genuine remorse for her actions. The judge took 1 day to deliberate. When the ruling came down, it was comprehensive and brutal. Eleanor's petition was denied with prejudice. The judge cited clear evidence of manipulative and controlling behavior and demonstrated pattern of using legal action to harm family members. Furthermore, the judge issued a restraining order preventing Eleanor from contacting Amelia, the twins, or Jack without express permission from all parties. The written ruling included language suggesting that if Eleanor filed any similar actions in the future, she might face sanctions for vexatious litigation. Eleanor left the courtroom with her remaining lawyers, her face a mask of rage and humiliation. Jack watched her go and felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just a hollow sense that justice, even when served, couldn't undo the damage that had been done. Amelia sat beside him, tears streaming down her face. Is it really over? It's really over. She can't take them? She can't take them. You're their mother. Nothing changes that. Amelia turned to him, and for the first time since he'd burst back into her life, she looked at him without walls, without armor. Thank you. For standing with me, for choosing us over her. It wasn't a choice. There was only ever one option, you and the girls. Everything else is just noise. They walked out of the courthouse together into autumn sunlight, and Jack felt the weight of his mother's control finally lift from his shoulders. He was free. His daughters were safe, and Amelia, for the first time in years, looked like she might actually believe that good things could last. Chapter 9. The Impossible Question. The restraining order was in place. Eleanor's custody petition had been crushed. The lawsuit against the Michael family was settled for an amount that made Amelia gasp when her lawyer told her the number. For the first time in 3 years, Amelia had enough money to breathe. She moved to a larger apartment, still in the same building Jack had purchased, but with 2 bedrooms and windows that let in actual sunlight. She quit both her jobs and enrolled in classes to finish the degree she'd abandoned when she got married. She bought new clothes for herself and the twins. She went to the dentist for the first time since the twins were born. She began, slowly and cautiously, to rebuild a life that looked like living instead of surviving. Jack remained constant through all of it. He took the twins 3 afternoons a week, giving Amelia time to study or rest, or simply exist without the weight of single motherhood crushing her. He showed up for birthday parties and doctor's appointments. He learned to braid hair and change diapers and sing lullabies off-key. He became, in every way that mattered except legally, the twins' father. Violet and Willow began calling him Daddy without prompting, and each time they did, it felt like both a gift and a stab wound, joy for what he was gaining, grief for what he'd lost. But between Jack and Amelia, there remained a careful distance. They were cordial, cooperative, even friendly. They talked about the twins' development, about scheduling, about practical matters. What they didn't talk about was the marriage that had ended. They didn't talk about whether forgiveness was possible. They didn't talk about the fact that sometimes Amelia would look at him, and Jack could see longing in her eyes before she shuttered it away. They existed in a strange limbo, more than co-parents, less than partners, unable to move forward or fully let go of the past. The question came on a winter evening, 6 months after the custody battle ended. Jack was helping put the twins to bed, reading them their favorite story about a bear who couldn't sleep. Violet had already passed out, her thumb in her mouth, her face peaceful. Willow was fighting sleep, her eyes drooping, then flying open as she struggled to stay awake. "Daddy stay?" Willow mumbled, her hand clutching at Jack's shirt. "I'll stay until you fall asleep, baby girl." "No, stay forever, like other daddies." Jack's breath caught. He looked up to find Amelia standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Willow, honey, Daddy has his own apartment." "He can't stay forever." "Why not?" "Sophie's daddy stays." "And Emma's. Why not our daddy?" The question hung in the air between them. Amelia and Jack stared at each other over their daughter's head, both frozen by the impossible simplicity of a child's logic. Why not? What reason was there really beyond hurt and fear and the vast ocean of pain that lay between them? "I'll stay until you're asleep," Jack repeated gently. "Then we'll see about tomorrow." Willow finally gave in to exhaustion, her breathing evening out, her grip on Jack's shirt loosening. He carefully extracted himself and followed Amelia out into the living room. She stood by the window, her arms wrapped around herself, staring out at the city lights. "We can't keep doing this," she said quietly. Jack's heart dropped.
"Doing what?"
"Oh, pretending we're not both thinking about it. Pretending we don't feel what we feel. Pretending that this co-parenting arrangement is enough when we both know it's not. Amelia." "I'm still angry at you." She turned to face him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I'm so angry sometimes I can barely breathe. I look at you playing with the girls, being this amazing father, and part of me wants to scream, because where was this man 3 years ago? Where was this dedication when I needed it most? I know, but I'm also exhausted from being angry. I'm tired of holding on to this rage like it's the only thing keeping me safe. I'm tired of lying awake wondering what my life would have been like if you'd believed me. I'm tired of watching you leave every night and feeling relieved and disappointed at the same time." Jack took a step toward her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust you again. The woman you married died the day you walked out, and I don't know if I can become her again, even if I wanted to." Amelia wiped at her eyes roughly. "But I also know that Willow's not wrong. The girls need more than a father who visits. They need a family. And maybe I need to stop punishing us all for your mistakes. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm just asking for a chance to build something new. Not a restoration of what we had, but something different. Something honest. What does that look like?" I don't know. I think we'd have to figure it out together. Jack moved closer, stopping just short of touching her. But maybe it starts with me telling you the truth, that I've never stopped loving you. That even when I believed the lies, even when I hated you for what I thought you'd done, part of me was still yours. And now that I know the truth, now that I see who you really are, what you survived, what you built, I love you more than I ever did before. That's not fair, Amelia's voice broke. You can't just say that and expect it to fix everything. I don't expect it to fix anything. I'm just telling you what's true. I love you. I'll love you if you never forgive me. I'll love you if you meet someone else. I'll love you if you spend the rest of your life hating me. Because loving you isn't contingent on what you feel for me. It just is. I hate that I still love you too. The admission seemed to cost her everything. I hate that I look at you and remember what it felt like to be married to you. I hate that sometimes, when you're playing with the girls, I imagine what it would be like if we were really together. If we were a real family instead of this broken thing we've become. We could be. We could try. And what happens when it gets hard? What happens the next time someone tells you something about me that isn't true? What happens when your mother finds some new way to poison your mind because you know she will? She's not done fighting. Then I'll choose you. Every time, no matter what, I'll choose you. I'll choose our family. Jack finally closed the distance between them, his hands coming up to cup her face. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I broke something that might never be fully repaired. But I'm asking anyway. I'm asking you to let me try to be the man you deserve. To be the husband I should have been. To build a life with you that's based on truth instead of lies. Amelia closed her eyes, leaning into his touch despite herself. I'm terrified. I'm terrified of letting you back in. I'm terrified of being vulnerable again. What if you hurt me? What if I can't survive it a second time? Then I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to find out. I'll spend every day proving that you can trust me. I'll show up over and over until you believe that I'm not going anywhere. That's not enough. I know, but it's all I have to offer. My presence, my commitment, my love. None of it erases what I did. None of it gives you back what I took. But maybe, if you let me, I can help build something new, something better. They stood there in the quiet apartment, the city humming beyond the windows, their daughters sleeping peacefully down the hall. Two broken people trying to figure out if healing was possible, if love could survive betrayal, if forgiveness was something that could be chosen rather than something that simply happened. I can't promise I'll ever fully forgive you, Amelia whispered. I can't promise this won't blow up in both our faces. I can't promise that the anger won't come back and swallow everything good we try to build. I'm not asking for promises. I'm asking for a chance. Just a chance. Just a chance to show you who I am now. To prove that I've learned. To demonstrate that I choose you every day for the rest of my life. Amelia opened her eyes, and Jack saw something in them he hadn't seen in years. Hope. Tentative, fragile, barely there, but hope nonetheless. Okay, one chance. But you need to understand something. If you fail me again, if you hurt our daughters, if you prove that you haven't actually changed, I won't give you another opportunity. This is it. This is all there is. I understand, and we take it slow. We don't jump back into marriage. We don't pretend the last 3 years didn't happen. We build from where we are, not from where we used to be. Whatever you need, whatever makes you feel safe. Amelia reached up and placed her hand over his, still cupping her face. I want to believe you. I want so badly to believe that this can work. But Jack, I'm so scared. I'm scared too. I'm terrified I'll mess this up. But I'd rather be terrified and trying than safe and alone. He leaned his forehead against hers, breathing her in. Let me try, please. Let me show you that I can be better. Okay, she whispered. Okay. They didn't kiss. They didn't embrace. They simply stood there, foreheads pressed together, hands linked, breathing the same air. It wasn't romance. It wasn't passion. It was something quieter, something more fundamental. Two people choosing to step into uncertain territory together, knowing the risks, accepting the possibility of pain. but believing that maybe, just maybe, love could be stronger than fear. Chapter 10. The reunion that costs everything. Jack didn't move back in immediately. He didn't propose. He didn't make grand gestures or sweeping declarations. Instead, he showed up for breakfast the next morning with groceries and made pancakes while Amelia got the twins ready for the day. He stayed for lunch, playing with Violet and Willow in the living room while Amelia studied. He left before dinner, giving her space, but called that evening to say goodnight to his daughters. It was small and ordinary and exactly what they needed. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm. Jack spent more time at the apartment, gradually becoming part of their daily life rather than a visitor passing through. He learned Amelia's coffee order and started bringing it without being asked. He noticed when she was stressed about her classes and offered to take the twins longer so she could study. He didn't push for more intimacy or try to force a reconciliation. He simply existed in their orbit, steady and present, proving through action rather than words that he'd changed. Amelia watched this transformation with cautious eyes. She noted every time he chose her truth over his mother's lies. She noticed how he never made promises he couldn't keep, how he under-promised and over-delivered. She saw him learning patience, learning to listen, learning to put her needs and the twins' needs above his own desire for forgiveness. Slowly, incrementally, her walls began to lower. Not all at once, not dramatically, just small moments where she let him in a little bit more. 3 months after their conversation, Jack showed up at the apartment with legal documents. Amelia's heart dropped when she saw the papers, old fears rising immediately. But when she read them, she found something entirely unexpected. Jack had liquidated a significant portion of his personal assets and placed them in an irrevocable trust with Amelia as the sole trustee. The trust was structured specifically to provide for her and the twins, with explicit language preventing anyone, including Jack, from accessing the funds without Amelia's permission. "What is this?" she asked, her hands shaking. "Freedom," Jack said simply. "It's you never having to choose between pride and your daughter's well-being again. It's you being able to finish your degree without working yourself into exhaustion. It's you never having to be afraid that if things don't work out between us, you'll be back where you started. This is millions of dollars. It's less than you deserve. It's less than I owe you for what you've been through. But it's what I can do right now to make sure you're never dependent on me or anyone else ever again." Amelia stared at the documents, tears streaming down her face. "Why would you do this?" "Because loving you means wanting you to be free, even if that freedom means you choose to walk away from me. Because I never want you to stay with me out of necessity. If you're with me, I want it to be because you want to be, not because you need to be. That's the most beautiful and terrifying thing anyone has ever done for me." "Is it working?" "The beautiful part?" Amelia laughed through her tears. "Maybe a little." They celebrated the twins' 4th birthday together, a small party in their apartment with cake and balloons and more presents than 2 small children needed. Violet and Willow blew out their candles together, making wishes they wouldn't share. Jack watched his daughters, confident now, healthy, full of joy, and felt the weight of missed years settle on his shoulders. He couldn't get that time back. He couldn't undo the damage. But he could be here now, and that had to be enough. That night, after the twins were asleep and the apartment was quiet, Amelia sat beside Jack on the couch. They'd been here before in this position, but something felt different now. The air between them was charged with possibility instead of weighed down by pain. "I need to tell you something," Amelia said quietly, "and I need you to hear me." "I'm listening." "I don't forgive you." The words were gentle but firm. "I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive you for what happened. The pain of those 3 years doesn't just disappear because you're being a good father now. The trauma of giving birth alone doesn't heal because you're here now. The fear I lived with doesn't go away because you've proved you've changed." Jack nodded, his throat tight. "I understand. But, Amelia continued, I've realized that forgiveness isn't the same as moving forward. I can acknowledge that you hurt me and still choose to build something new with you. I can hold space for my anger while also making room for the possibility of joy. I can remember the past while still living in the present. What does that mean? It means I'm willing to try, really try, not just co-parenting, but us, together, building a family that includes both the broken parts and the healing parts. She turned to face him fully. It means I love you, not the way I loved you before. That version of love died when you left. But I love the man you've become. I love the father you are. And I love the way you've let me be angry and hurt and difficult without trying to rush me past it. Amelia. Her name was a prayer. I'm still scared. I'm still going to have moments where the past comes rushing back and I panic. I'm still going to need reassurance and space and patience. This isn't going to be easy or simple or straightforward. I don't need easy. I just need you. They kissed for the first time in 3 years, and it felt like coming home and stepping into something new simultaneously. It wasn't passionate or desperate. It was gentle, tentative, full of questions and promises and hope that felt both fragile and unbreakable. Jack stayed that night, sleeping on the couch at Amelia's request. She wasn't ready for more, and he respected that. In the morning, he woke to find Violet and Willow curled up against him, having climbed off the couch in the night to be close to their daddy. Amelia stood in the doorway watching them, her expression soft in the early light. This is what I wanted to see, she said quietly. My family, together finally. Is that what we are? A family? We're becoming one, slowly, messily, imperfectly. But yes, we're a family. They spent that day together, all 4 of them, doing nothing remarkable. They made breakfast together, the twins helping pour cereal and spill milk. They went to the park and watched Violet and Willow play. They came home and made dinner as a team, working around each other in the small kitchen with the ease of practice. They put the girls to bed together, reading stories and singing songs and kissing foreheads. And when the apartment was quiet, Jack and Amelia sat at the kitchen table and made plans. Not for a wedding or a future set in stone, but for next week, next month, the possibilities that stretched ahead of them. They talked about Amelia finishing her degree, about finding a house with a yard for the twins, about how to handle the inevitable difficulties that would arise. They didn't pretend it would be perfect. They didn't promise it would be easy. They simply committed to trying, together, to build something real from the ruins of what had been destroyed. As Willow had reached across that breakfast table months ago, placing her small hand over her mother's scarred one and her father's trembling fingers, something had shifted. Not healing. Healing was too simple a word for what they needed. But a willingness, a choice, a decision to find out what came next, instead of staying trapped in what had already happened. Amelia felt something she thought had died forever begin to stir. Not hope, exactly, but something even more dangerous. The willingness to believe that broken things could be rebuilt, that love could survive betrayal, and that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing were the same thing. The morning light caught in her daughter's hair as they laughed at something Jack said, and Amelia made a choice. Not to forget, not even to forgive completely, but to step forward into whatever came next, trusting that this time, they would face it together.
Thanks for watching!